Hello everyone, I'm back again. I've not done any videos for a while here. I am currently walking northbound on an ATV trail near Presque Isle, Maine. My truck is in the shop. The exhaust pipe came loose. It burnt out a bunch of different components under the truck, unfortunately. However, the shop that worked on it back in June, it looks like they're going to cover most, if not all, of the bill for me, fortunately, because it was due to faulty workmanship on their part. My apartment building is on the market. All the tenants are out. It is vacant. The original plan was to shut it down for the winter, and I still owe $5,000 in utilities on this building. Between the electric and the sewer bill, which came out to $2,700 in 6 months. Due to all the tenants, all the kids that were in there last year that didn't pay any rent, I'm stuck with all these bills, so it's been a horror story. So what I'm going to talk about, however, is other things. Climate change agenda. Our planet is cooling, as I've said in my previous videos, causing a disruption of weather patterns, which they're blaming on the opposite, which is global warming, which would cause less disruption rather than more in the weather patterns. I've explained in previous videos that in global cooling, the jet stream takes on a more meridional pattern as cold air or unusually cool air punches down into the middle latitudes, and it doesn't do it evenly. It does it in spurts, which is the reason for a meridional jet stream. The greater the difference in temperature between the poles and the equator, the more volatile the weather gets. Not what they're claiming. Less difference in the temperature between the poles and the equator would create a weaker, more zonal jet stream pattern. Not what we're seeing now. I also said last year, I talked about the fake record hurricane season. It was fake. They enhanced every tropical weather system they could get their hands on. As I've said in previous videos, my prediction was we were going to have a non-existent season this year because they took too much heat out of the Earth's budget last year with all these storm enhancements. All this extra heat was taken out of the ocean. The sun has not ramped up. The heat has not been replenished in these oceans. It's going to be a lot harder this year to get a storm. And I kind of think that the oceans are still tapped out of heat from last year. It's going to be a non-existent tropical season this year, despite all the predictions of another record season, which falls in line with their agenda of global warming. Yes, we have had 5 named storms, but pretty much all of them did not qualify as tropical weather systems. They were, in reality, low pressure systems unusually far south latitude that were forming that they tagged names onto, including even that one hurricane, which I don't believe was actually a hurricane. It did not do any damage like it should have. Right now, the tropics worldwide are quiet, and it's in line with what I predicted last year, as early as last year, because they artificially enhanced just about every weather system last year. And even the ones that are up to date, they tried artificially enhancing those as well. So are we going to see anything the rest of the season? I would not be surprised if we did not see any more hurricanes this year. At least none that form on their own naturally. They might, if there's some more tropical waves that come off Africa later this month or next month, maybe they might manage to enhance them enough But I'm sorry, mankind cannot create a hurricane on his own, or on whatever you want to put it. They only can enhance what's already there. Of course, people might say, well, what about the Pacific Northwest heat wave that broke all records? That is, the summers there are determined by wind flow. How hot the summer gets there is determined by wind flow, not global temperatures. If the wind blows steadily off the Pacific Northwest will never get a heat wave. I don't care how warm it gets globally. If that wind is coming off that Pacific Ocean most or all of the time, they cannot have a heat wave in the Pacific Northwest. It will not happen. At least not west of the Cascades. The only way the Pacific Northwest can get a heat wave is if the west to east flow off the Pacific is interrupted and perhaps replaced by an east wind. You get an east wind in the mid-upper levels of the atmosphere. It comes down off the Cascades. The air gets warmed, it gets dried as it comes down, flowing westward. If you got an upper level blocking high over the region, it is possible in the summer, especially in late June, early July, to see 120 degree temperatures there. The only reason it's never happened in recent times is because we never had the weather patterns. There goes an ATV. Most of the time, up until recent years, because we were in a benign climate, the winds blew off the Pacific, so they never got very hot up there in Pacific Northwest. In recent years, with the global cooling I've been talking about, these weather patterns are not only becoming possible but more frequent, and it's very easy for people to blame global warming on it because it's never gotten that hot in recent times in that region. I'm going to take a left here because I have to head back to town as I have my DOT physical scheduled in a couple of hours. I got to get back there. And I do not have a vehicle. My girlfriend is out with a friend of hers getting some stuff done that we were supposed to get done up in Madawaska, which is an hour away from here. But getting back to what I was talking about, the reason the Pacific Northwest broke all heat records is simply in the direction the wind was coming from. It was coming from a direction in the summertime that it almost never comes from, which is the east. What caused this very unusual east wind? Again, an unusual configuration of the jet stream. They could never get an east wind with a jet stream that just flows west to east. You would have to have a meridional flow to have the right weather pattern for them to get that hot. With global warming, that would never happen because the jet stream would be zonal and further north of what it usually is, but far enough south to where the Pacific Northwest would still get that regular west to east flow off the Pacific all summer. They would never get that hot in a global warming scenario, which was true in the 20th century when the sun was more active. The winds blew west to east almost all the time. Now with the sun weakening, we're starting to see return of the patterns that we saw in the 1700s. Glaciers since 2017 have been advancing again in Greenland. Glaciers that have been in retreat for decades have suddenly started advancing again. With all the tinkering they did last year, I predicted that global temperatures would fall. They have fallen below average the last couple months. Even they're admitting that global temperatures are actually falling below the 30-year average, which I never imagined would happen. With the oceans being cooler, another La Nina coming, perhaps even deeper than last year's, which has been, I believe very strongly, was caused by a weakening of solar activity. Oceans are starting to cool as a result. The trend is going to continue. Again, I don't think we're going to have much of a tropical weather season this year. If there's no interference, no tinkering with the weather, I don't think we'd even see anything at all form in the tropics this year because, again, too much heat was removed that should not have been removed from the budget last year for all this enhancement that went on. That is why the tropics right now are extremely quiet going into August. They're blaming it on other things. It's because the oceans simply are not warm enough. Too much heat has been taken out. That was true last year also. However, there was enough heat left to where that with enhancement, they could still enhance a lot of these tropical weather systems enough to get them at least into tropical storm status maybe. And the Gulf had enough heat, they were able to pump up a couple hurricanes. Last year they tapped out that Gulf of Mexico. It's going to be hard to get anything in the Gulf this year. So what are my thoughts on COVID? Well, the Delta variant is out there. People are going to likely come down with it. They're going to blame people not getting vaccinated for it. As far as I'm concerned, somebody who I did a video sometime last year on health and wellness. If we, the best health insurance is self-love and self-care. That's the best way to insure against COVID. I found a nice red blazed path here. This way is back toward town, so I'm going to go this way. But the best insurance against COVID, the best insurance against getting sick is self-care and self-love. Staying away from harmful substances, keeping our lives as pure as possible. For example, personally, I've never been drunk in my adult life. Never gotten high on any drugs and never desired to. I always desired full control of my mental faculties. I've never overeaten. I've always gotten out in the woods whenever I could. Instead of sitting on a couch all day, I'd be out here doing this sort of stuff. And yeah, maybe I might have gotten some mild symptoms. It could have been COVID on a couple of occasions last year or early this year, but my body successfully dealt with it. I did not get terribly sick over it, to the point where I should get a vaccination over it. I trust that my own body will handle whatever comes my way, and that is how I feel about it. So that is going to be it for this video. There's a nice little pond off to the right. And I think this is, I'm trying to remember the name of this lake. So my truck, they said, may be done by tomorrow, most certainly by Friday. I do have to take my DOT physical. If that goes okay, hopefully we'll be out of here on Friday.